Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas. Sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you to grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. As you know, I'm in Burrawang in New South Wales. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome Ameena Basile, who's in Melbourne on the same time zone, same day. Amina, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast studio. Great to see you.
Good afternoon, David. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, Amina. And Amina, you and I have known each other for a reasonable amount of time, and we met because you invited yourself to meet me when I was down in Melbourne and introduced yourself, and you brought along Julie Parker.
I did. I think
really,
it was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I thought this is a really interesting way to get to know two people who I'd heard of Julie, but I didn't know you. But from there, I had great respect for you and Julie, and you and Julie had started working together then and still working together today. Initially, it was Julie Parker Consulting, but now it is a more evenly balanced generic name for the business, which is always great. But Amina, tell me your story for my listeners. Tell me your story about how you got to where you are today and where you started in terms of dentistry and even before dentistry, because I know you've got some interesting backstories to share.
It is interesting backstory. So I grew up in country New South Wales in a little town called Griffith. It's not known for the best of things sometimes, but, you know, it was a beautiful little town to grow up with nevertheless.
It was known for the mafia, wasn't it?
It was known for the mafia. Yeah.
Yeah. Donald Mackay, still never found him.
Yeah, that's right.
Sad.
So, yeah, we grew up in, as you know, it's mostly Italian population. So I do speak Italian. And yeah, my dad was a GP there. So I grew up, you know, in a medical practice around that environment, answering the phones or helping him on the weekends, all that kind of thing. And then as life evolved and I was a teenager and my parents separated and all those sorts of things, I then was a little bit naughty. My dad was from Pakistan. So imagine being a Pakistani doctor, and then the expectations of your children. In our family, my maiden name's Khan. So the expectation is you finish school and become a doctor or an engineer. They're basically the options. And anyway, I was a bit naughty. I decided to leave school. I actually wanted to be a singer. So I used to sing in clubs and pubs and all this sort of thing. And with that, it meant that if I was going to leave school, I had to leave home. That's the ultimatum I was given. And I was 15 years old. And so I actually did it. And I think my dad thought, yeah, I'll give her a week and she'll be home. But I actually never, ever went home. So I was a very brave young girl. On reflection, I don't think I would even have the guts to do it now, to be honest with you. And I look at my 16-and-a-half-year-old daughter and definitely not. She wouldn't be able to do it. But anyhow, I needed a job. I needed to get a job if I was, going to make life work. So the only job going in the whole town for a 15-year-old was for a trainee dental assistant. So I went along with my resume, sitting in the waiting room. And in that waiting room was all the HSC school leavers sitting there with their resumes. Anyway, I got the job and I was a little bit like, well, I didn't actually want it. I just needed a job. But anyway, so I started working there and it was the worst experience of my life. Hated every minute of it, but I wanted to finish the 12 months complete the traineeship and just have the experience. And also I needed the income. So I used to work, I don't know how many hours, because we used to start, it certainly wasn't a 38-hour week, because some days we started at like 6:30 in the morning at the hospital seeing patients under GA and things like that. So it was a big week. But however, the guy that I work for, he'd pay me, the set 38 hours. Doesn't matter if he did 45 or 50. And it was peanuts. And he wasn't a very nice boss or teacher either. So I can remember the first day, to have the instruments lined up on the counter. I went through them about 3 times and then I was meant to know everything, yeah? And when we got to the surgery and he asked for a flat plastic or something and maybe I handed him a ball burnisher, he'd throw it across the room and call me an idiot and all sorts of things. It was terrible. Anyway, I stuck it out for 12 months and didn't have much self-confidence at the end of it, I can tell you. And then I moved to Canberra and I got a job with this beautiful Australian man from West Wyalong. He'd moved there and opened a practice in Manuka. Spent some time with him and it was a complete turnaround and I really started to love what I was doing. He was a great teacher. He was very patient and he really boosted my confidence. He helped me to grow, in that space. So I started to really like dental assisting. Anyway, sometime later, a couple of years down the track, my dad passed away unexpectedly and he was quite young. I was only 21. And after 35 years of private practice working in Griffith, he passed away and his financial situation was not pretty. And I was like, how can someone be so smart and work so hard and be so broke? I just couldn't understand it. And although he was a brilliant doctor, I believe, he traveled the world lecturing with acupuncture, won awards in that space. He was a very big on the integration of natural medicine and Western medicine. And so I think pretty progressive for his time, probably. And businessman, not his forte, terrible. Yeah. And he was a very generous man and all that kind of thing, but it's to his own detriment, and probably to his family's detriment, in all honesty. So that really made me start to think about one day, I want to be able to help these science brains, doctors and dentists, not do that, to be able to run good businesses and make money and not kill themselves and not be taken advantage of and all those things. So I then moved into reception roles and got interested in practice management. I started to work through, back then there wasn't many consultants to choose from or many programs, but momentum was the thing to do back then. And so I started that journey and it was wonderful. Learned so much from that. And I also went to uni in Canberra and studied accounting and really wanted to make sure I could do a good job, from both angles, knowing the clinical stuff and also knowing from a business point of view how to work things. And it was a really good combination and I loved being able to have that really holistic approach and knowledge. So I worked in a practice in Canberra and this was probably my first real challenge as a practice manager, It was a busy practice, too many patients, nowhere to put them, difficult to manage emergencies, the facility was small, booked out for months and months on end. And so with that practice, I was part of, for one, initiating getting some consulting help to learn what to do things differently, bigger or better. And then we, with that practice, decided to renovate. So what we did, we took on the other room, like empty shop space next door, and extended the practice so that we could have a hygiene department, bigger stairy, more staff, because we had the patients to service all of this. And in the meantime, we moved the admin to my little unit that I was renting. And the dentist rented chairs elsewhere to see the patients whilst all this was happening. So it was a big project. It was an exciting project and it all went wonderfully, wonderfully well. And then I didn't hang around for that long afterwards because I then met my husband and moved to Melbourne. So, but it was a great learning experience and I was really confident that I can do this again, in another practice in a different way. So then when I came to Melbourne, I got a position as a practice manager for a practice close to the CBD. And again, it was a 4-chair practice, newly established, new fit out. They just opened the doors basically. And so we started there with myself and the business owner, the practice owner, the principal dentist, just the two of us and one DA. And I reckon within 12 to 18 months, we had all 4 surgeries full. And we also implemented a hygiene department there and started doing things differently. This guy had been practicing for many years, but he had never worked with a hygiene department, but knew it was probably a good thing and the right move. So I spent 10 years there. And then following that, I knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to move into a consulting space. I knew that I could have that freedom to be able to help many others and to, do work my way when I want, work my own hours and all those sorts of things as well. And that came when I was having my second daughter about 10 years ago. And the timing just seemed to be right. So that, it was a slow start with a newborn baby at home and trying to establish things. But so I started dental management expertise and I was working in that space for a little while. But quite early in that space, I reached out to Julie Parker. And I was just looking for people to talk to that had worked in this space, mentors, that kind of thing. And I'd actually seen Julie's emails come through, from time to time, or I'd stalked other consultants in the space at times, And sometimes you look at, on the internet, you pick up the web page and you're like, oh, I might give them a call. And yeah, one day, maybe one day. And then this particular day, I thought, what have I got to lose? The worst she can do is tell me she's not interested in speaking to me and I'll deal with it. I'll leave.
Yes.
But she was very friendly and we met up for a coffee and I have to say that was pretty much it. She was so warm and welcoming. We just hit it off. We started doing a few projects together. And then in 2018, we did a 3-day conference here in Melbourne and that was wildly successful. And we had a great time. So we started collaborating more and more. And then in 2020, through COVID, obviously life was different. Yeah, things were a bit harder. So I was like, what are we going to do? We can't go out to practices. And I had said to Julie, I did a diploma in practice management several years ago. And I felt like it was a bit of a waste of time, in all honesty. It was not really directed at dental practice management at all. And I said, I've always really wanted to, maybe put together a dental practice management course. And Julie loved that idea and she was quite passionate about it as well. So that's what we did through 2020. We established this dental practice management course that was really, really successful, was so busy that kept Julie and I both afloat in terms of income for the next couple of years. And because, as you know, in Melbourne, it took a long time before we were allowed out the front door again.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed anywhere. So that was great. And then I think, I don't even know how long it's been now, but probably by 2023, we fully merged into Dental Business Mastery. And it's such a nice thing that you can have that kind of partnership that works. I don't think in 10 years we've ever had a disagreement really about our work. We're pretty aligned in the way we think things should work or what works and what doesn't. Always looking at better ways to do things. As you know, particularly now with AI and technology, there's always more and more things being thrown on the table that we can use, new tools. So yeah, it's been a magnificent journey.
Well, that's amazing. I want to go back to the story about your dad, because that is something that inspired me as a coach, was that the ownership of a dental practice is really a gift, because it's the opportunity, if it's done right, for you to have a good lifestyle, be helping your customers to get healthy and also get the dentistry that they need. But because you're running a small business, it allows you to manage your time, but also save money so that you can have a retirement when you want, where you want, and do the things that you want in your retirement. But so many dentists don't do that. And, I know your father died at an early age, but other dentists get to retirement age and they've got nothing and they still have to keep working. And that to me is the biggest disappointment to me, and the biggest tragedy is the opportunity lost of not being able to do that. And even a friend of mine who we've been talking about before we started the recording, he said he wasn't a very good investor, but he said he was a religious investor, in that he would just invest in low return stuff and he still was able to retire at a young age. It was just the act of investing rather than chasing shiny objects or chasing the next big thing. But so much, I think, of the fact that a lot of dentists miss out on their on this opportunity, and it's because, Amina, that what happens is that they think they're smart enough to get into dental school, and then they think that they're smart enough to get through dental school. So they think they're smart enough to work things out on their own, and ultimately that's not the smart thing to do. The smart thing is to find somebody to help you to see the corners that you can't see and see the opportunities that you are brushing over so that you do things better and more quickly than trying to work stuff out for yourself. And so, Omar Reed said to me in 2010 that in America, 95% of dentists reaching the age of 65 can't afford to retire because they haven't saved the money to replace their dental income. So they keep working. And to me, that's the biggest tragedy in dentistry. So that lesson was, imprinted into your brain from your father as a doctor, and then you've seen along the way, good dentists or average dentists not doing well, and then you've said, all right, there's an opportunity to educate them from your observations as to what works and what doesn't work. Because it's hard being a dentist. You're in the car mechanic space. You're underneath the car all day long, and then you've got to run the business, and you can't run the business. So you do need help. And hats off to you for achieving this from within dentistry, because a lot of dentists at the top of dentistry don't understand the business side.
Yeah. And it's an unfortunate space. I mean, we were talking before too about, one, they don't have the knowledge, and two, because they are vulnerable in terms of being busy professionals who haven't got time, then they're often taken advantage of, by maybe investment people or finance people or accountants. And I was telling you a little bit of a story before about my dad, how he was taken advantage of by his accountant. He actually did the wrong thing by him when it came to finances. So that's also another little angle that can be quite messy. And I guess the thing is those of us, sometimes we resist getting help with things in general. Could be health, I don't want to pay that PT, that's a bit expensive. But then we're paying the price if we don't do the work. Or, and I've done these things myself. I had an accountant that I didn't really pay him much, but he didn't really do much for me. And the outcomes weren't really great either. So it all sort of went hand in hand. And this last 2 years, or maybe 1 year, I've been paying 10 times what I used to pay for the last accountant. But this guy's moving mountains. He's actually getting stuff done, doing things, and it's beneficial. And when I think about it, from the dentists and the practice managers for that matter, that the longer we resist help, because we don't want to pay for it, we don't want to admit that we don't know what we're doing, we don't want to make the time to do it because it's another job, and we're just prolonging good outcomes. It's just like, chopping off one toe at a time until it gets harder and harder to fix. Whereas if they just reached out to a consultant and got help, potentially that could be a very, very different scenario much more quickly. And I see that with practice managers too. Like, we call them the gatekeepers. I don't know if you have that experience, but sometimes people at the front desk don't want to know about the consultants. And maybe they feel like they're going to be shown up or that we're intimidating. However, I remember in this one practice I was talking about in Canberra, I was like, the momentum brochure came in the mail with all these awesome conferences and all the things you can learn and what we're going to do. And I was so bloody excited. And I went to my boss and I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And fortunately, she was an awesome chick. And she's like, you know what? I think we should at least go to the first conference and find out more. And what I think a lot of the time happens with practice managers is that they're too scared to say, I don't know everything and I'd like to learn more. Can we do this? And actually, a boss is going to be much more impressed by that than you just sitting back plodding along and nothing great happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You're right. And in coaching, I've come across practice managers who believe that their role is to help the dentist, and they can save the dentist a lot of money on a coach because we know this stuff anyway, just listen to me. But often they're very protective of their own space, and they can be found out by the coach to be not as good as what they're telling the boss they can be. And of course, there's always the stories, and you've probably seen them, Amina, where you visit a practice and the practice manager has been there for a long time and the dentist has wished they had been able to help that practice manager find another job for a long time. And there's this stalemate and it's not helping anybody. The dentist wants the practice manager out of the practice. The practice manager is entrenched in the practice and preventing it from reaching its full potential. And that can be disappointing as well. But it's not just practice managers. I just saw a comment that I made about a practice that I looked at to help in 2017, 3 dentists, no hygienist. and they were too busy. And I crunched some numbers, and I worked out that it was costing them the practice somewhere between $1.35 and $1.7 million a year by not employing a hygienist, because of the amount of cleans that the dentists were doing at the price cleans dictate. And if they got hygienists in, could then create far more room for them to do more dentistry. And they said, we're restricted by hours here. Even the council won't let them work from 8 till 8. And I thought, surely they must be able to stretch that with council or ask for it. It's better for the community. It's better for the council that those people stay getting their dentistry so they can spend their money at the takeaway places in the area rather than go somewhere else. Business is the driver for councils to make money. But anyway, sometimes again it's these guys were too smart for their own good to say, look, we don't want to do that. We're happy doing our own cleans, and nobody wins. Nobody wins when dentists are doing cleans. Patients do not win. There is periodontal disease coming out of the air conditioning in those practices because a dentist cannot clean teeth as well as a hygienist.
The resistance around this in 2026 in Australia is like so amazing to me, because I'm still finding it's a minority of practices that have a hygiene department. And whenever I recommend them to someone, or I think it's suitable for a practice, like they're busy and they've got plenty of patients, and I think it should happen everywhere anyway, but and I think the next step is a hygiene department. My goodness, the resistance from particularly associates, they completely freak out.
Yeah, it's they just don't understand. The best explanation that I had was from a hygienist in America who was also a coach for hygiene departments, and she just said, a hygienist can pre-diagnose for a dentist up to $6,000 a day of dental treatment just by what they spot, how they show the patient, so that when the dentist comes in to do the examination, the patient is already aware of these issues rather than a dentist coming in and they're going, well, he's looking for his next car payment, or he's looking for his next holiday payment. And that the dentists don't understand that mindset in the patient, that when they're doing checkups or, a quick clean, sometimes a clean by a dentist is only 6 lower anteriors. They don't go upstairs and they don't go back. They just clean the tartar off those 6 teeth and they go, yeah, your clean's done. And there's so much medical reason for having better hygiene. The diabetes, periodontal disease, co-causal, dual cause. One causes the other, causes the other, causes the other, just that. And now this dementia and periodontal disease link.
Dr. Jason Pang, do you follow his stuff?
Oh, no, I've known Jason for a long time. In fact, when I retired, Jason became my family's dentist.
Oh, he's a beautiful guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy.
Numbers he shares around perio disease, or actually particular parasites and bacteria and dementia, is astounding, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, he's such a nice guy, and and he's my father's dentist, and I retired 8 years ago, and my father's had dementia for 13 years, and so Jason really looks after him very, very well, and my sister and my brother-in-law as well. So
yeah,
it's and my financial advisor goes there too. So,
it's great.
And my financial advisor was never my patient. So yeah, it's just like, who do you know? Oh, Jason's the man in North Sydney. No, that's good. So your movement into and you spoke very highly of Julie Parker, and since you introduced me to Julie all those years ago, I've had nothing but respect for what she has done, the way she communicates with me and with Jane, and what you two do together. Has it always been roses in terms of with clients, though? Sometimes, as you know, and I've told you, sometimes you can go into a practice and despite the practice needing a coach, there's resistance from team members, there's resistance from associates, there's resistance from the doctor, the whole pile of stuff. It's not just everybody needs it, but nobody wants it sometimes, isn't it?
Exactly. And look, absolutely is the answer. Of course, we're going to have those experiences. To be honest, I think we've been pretty lucky. We've had some really beautiful practices that we've worked for and beautiful people. The people that I've got that we're working with at the moment, We are actually blessed. They're all go-getters and all a pleasure to work with. I don't have anyone that we're currently working with that I feel like, can we sack them? I don't want them. I don't want to work with them. And if there is, I think I'd probably get to that pretty quickly anyway, because it doesn't work. It's not nice for us either if you work with a practice for a few months and you just feel that resistance and you're not going to get results. It's better just to pull the pin, because it's a two-way street. And, David, it's a bit like us going to get to a personal trainer and then we're not going to listen or we're not going to do the work. If I'm going to sit on my bum and eat cake all day, then they're not going to really be able to help me very much. So it has to be a two-way street.
Yeah, that sadly is the answer. I think one of my coaches said that if it works for you, and Julie was a practice owner, so if it works for you when you're owning a practice, and then you can teach somebody else, one person, and it works for them, then when it doesn't work for somebody, the answer is not what you're teaching and what you did, because that's already been proven. The answer has to be, as I say, it's in the bathroom mirror. Go and have a look at the bathroom mirror, and there's the problem. It's you.
Yeah.
You're not doing the work. And I think there's a photo out there or a sign that says, if at first you don't succeed, maybe it would be wise to do what your coach told you to do in the first place.
Yeah, I guess on the flip side of that, we look on Instagram all the time and you see these people who do go to a personal trainer. It's just the best analogy because it's simple, yeah? And you see the transformation. Why? Because they did the work. They got the advice, but they also did the work.
One, it's the advice. Two, it's the accountability, to be accountable to someone. I remember one of my patients telling me that he had a personal trainer. He said, because on a cold winter's morning, he said, and then alarm goes off, I know that I'm paying them whether I turn up or not. So I've got to turn up, and then I've got to do the work as well. And so it accountability and doing the work. Again, if you don't do anything, it doesn't happen magically.
Nothing changes if nothing changes, yeah?
It's like going to a conference, taking lots of notes, and then when you get home, you put it on the bookshelf and you never look at it again. It doesn't work. That's called shelf help, isn't it? It doesn't work. You've got to do it.
Every dentist has done that, haven't they?
Haven't they? And then the other thing
I can remember the boss, a boss coming back from a conference. They're like, got all these notes. Look at all this. We've got to do this one day. And that's it.
Yeah. Give him 2 weeks. He'll get over it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. One of my staff once told me that the biggest change that they saw in me in the 7 years that they worked for me was I went and saw Dick Barnes, and they said, you came back from that Dick Barnes conference and you were a different dentist. I'm going, really? So yeah, again, Linda Miles as well. I remember seeing her, and it was just like, oh wow, this. I've never looked at this side of the practice, and even we were talking about John Kozanoskis, and I got a letter in the mail, like you were talking about with Momentum. I got this letter in the mail, and I thought I'd like to go to this, and I had eye surgery, and I couldn't drive. I had one eye with a patch, and I rang them. I said, look, I really wanted to come to this Monday night meeting, but I can't get there. I said, have you got anyone out my way? And they said, oh, closest we got is a guy at Fairfield. And I said, oh, is that my friend? And they go, yeah. I said, oh, that's all right. I'll ring him. And he gave me a lift. And we sat there, and there was another dentist there who we knew as a reference. And when he drove me home, my friend, he said, what do you think? I said, I think I'm going to do this. He said, you know what? I am too. And we both stayed with that company, as I was telling you, for 6 years. And we had different practices. At the end of 6 years, we both had better practices, but our practices weren't turned into one similar practice. His was a better version of his, and mine was a better version of mine. And I think as a coach, you'll find that that's all you really want to do. You don't want to turn everybody into a McDonald's dentist. You just want to turn them into a better version that makes them happier and more productive individually, because people do have their own way of doing things or their own goals, and to ignore those goals and say, this is what you must do, that can be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can remember, I remember you do practice visits. I worked my way out of doing practice visits. And the reason for that was that I found I spent a lot of time getting to the practice and getting back from the practice. And although I was there, I saw some things, but I didn't see everything. And I found that it wasn't a good use of my time. And still, and you probably agree, you can see stuff, but then years down the track, you find out stuff that you think, why are they doing that? Why have I never seen that? Yeah, how are they getting away with doing that or not doing what I've told them? And so it's a frustrating thing. I remember one practice, I sat in the waiting room and I watched the receptionist on the phone on a phone call that had a very personal flavour to it. And a patient walked in and stood in front of the desk for like 3 minutes without even being acknowledged. And I'm going, not even just like point to a seat, like, yeah, no sign language, nothing. And I'm going, the doctor doesn't know that this is happening, and they probably don't know that this is happening regularly. And that's a patient not feeling welcomed, a new patient. And it's just like, well, it was just so. There's so much that goes on that people don't see, but funnily enough, I mean, you would never have behaved like that as a front office person, and we know great front office people go out of their way to make new patients and patients welcome. But why do some people go out of their way to ignore people?
I
Does
can
that
tell
happen?
you, I reckon it was about 6 months ago, maybe a year. I went into Just Jeans to buy the kids some jeans or whatever. I walked in and there was a chick there on her mobile phone, the phone's like this, and she just was refusing to get eye contact with me. And I hung around, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds. Then I just walked out. Like, it's terrible. It's the worst. It doesn't take much to go, just acknowledge somebody and yeah. First impressions, that kind of thing happening, you've lost them already. They're already going to be annoyed. So you're going to have to do a lot to make it up for them to be impressed. Whereas if you're impressed about something straight up, then it's sort of harder work to disappoint. Yeah.
It
So, yeah, it's so important.
it's so true. Years ago, I got invited by Lincoln Harris to speak to a group of his American friends in Chicago, and I got to my hotel late at night and got out of the car, and the guy getting my luggage said the foyer is up the escalator and make a right turn, and that's where you reception is. So I went up there, and as soon as I walked up to the desk, they said, "Welcome, Dr. Moffat." And I go, "How'd you know it was me?" And they go, "It's our job." And of course, it's the guy getting the bags out of the boot, and he sees my name on the luggage tags, and he's got a two-way, and and I thought that's knowing that's the important thing. And so similar, that used to happen. Jane had a car dealership that she had her car serviced, and they would greet her by name when she drove up. And of course, they know the license plate. And of course, they know the owner's name, and they've got it on and in dentistry, we've got that. We know who's coming in. We know their name. And if it's somebody who's a new patient and somebody walks in at that time, you've got a pretty good chance that that's the new patient if it's not one of your regulars. And so you can greet them by name because you've got their name. You don't have to wait for them to ding a bell and say, "Hello, who are you?" Because there's a 99% chance that if you say the name in that book, that's that person, and they're going to be impressed that you're actually one step ahead of them. So little stuff like that, makes that great first impression, doesn't it?
It does. And I think practices get just too busy, caught up in the daily grind, to really pay attention to all these things until maybe things start to dwindle a little bit. And then it's like, well, what do I do now? But
I had one of my clients actually ask me, when a new patient arrives, when should the dentist and the back office be told about it? Like when they arrive, I go, "Is that what you're doing?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "But what about the paperwork?" Like really, there's no point in letting them know until that patient's ready to come down, because otherwise you end up with this dead zone time. When have they finished their paperwork? Are they ready? Yeah. It's like, get them to come in early, fill in the paperwork, so you still run to time, but don't let them know when the regulars are here who can come straight in. But yes, why create an anticipation? Oh, your new patient's here, but we don't even know if they're a fast writer or typer. They might be it's just little stuff like that, and again, having systems as to who should notify the dentist and what the dentist should do. I remember after I left my practice, I got offered a job near my home, and I thought, "Oh, this will be good. I can walk to work," and I did. And I had a new patient, and I said, "All right." I said, "Okay, you got this new patient. It's a man. He's in his 30s. He's coming in the middle of the day." I said, "Can you tell me a bit about him?" They go, no. I said, so is he working? Is he on holidays? Does he work night shift? Why is he coming in the middle of the day? They go, no, that's for you to find out. And so I've got to do this familiarity in the time that I'm meant to be drilling teeth, whereas they could have created that familiarity beforehand, passed it on to me, and then it's kind of like, these people are talking about me like I'm a person, not like I'm just a, a credit card with teeth or a tooth card. And so that the other thing that they did there, which I really didn't like, was that they plonked my patient in a room looking at a wall and then walk out until I was ready. And it's kind of like, hey, that lady's going to spend $4,000 on 2 crowns, and you've ignored her, and she's just looking at a wall. Like, is that going to be a positive experience for her? And they go, oh, but we've got sterilisation to do. I said, yeah, but she's the last patient. We don't need any of those instruments today. We can do them afterwards. Like, just sit with her, talk to her, ask her how her day's been. How was your drive over? All this sort of stuff. Sometimes they don't think. They're too process
Task
oriented.
orientated. Yeah.
Task oriented instead of people oriented.
Or outcomes. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. And unless, we can often assume as leaders in a practice that people should know, but you can't assume these things are common sense. Some people have to it needs to be pointed out to them, why we do these things or why it's an issue. And I'm sure that when you actually explain it, they'll think, oh, yeah, I didn't really think of it that way, see things through one perspective, not multiple.
But it's everything has a flow-on consequence, and so often the problem that they bring you as a coach, Amina, is not the real problem. It's like, back up the line. There's the problem up here, and when we fix that, we fix this one down here, but we also fix a few others in the way that are caused. So it's like we're having trouble reactivating people. Like, here's my tip. Don't let anybody leave without an appointment. Don't let people cancel, and you don't have to reactivate anybody. And how do we do that? We communicate with them better, clearly. We let them know the consequences of not doing things, and we impress upon them that this is their health, and therefore we don't have a reactivation problem.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that it's a communication problem. Like, the dentist is lousy at communicating. One practice I heard, they called their dentist, or one of their dentists, he was a flipper. And I said, what do you mean by that? They say he just brings the chart out and flips it on the counter and says 2-hour appointment, and then runs away. And of course, he would have multiple cancellations because nobody has any idea of what's going on. And it's communication. And if it's not communication, it's communication and leadership.
Yeah.
And don't you find the lousy leaders have the worst practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can be the best dentist in the world, but if you can't lead and you can't communicate and you're not personable, I can't imagine how successful your practice is going to be.
It's unsuccessful. That's our success. It's just unsuccessful. Yeah. At dental school, some of the best clinicians in dental school ended up with some very ordinary practices and became specialists and had very ordinary practices as specialists as well. It's
You just see people who, for example, my husband's a painter, right? He owns his own
You
painting.
mean like Van Gogh, or
No, I wish. No, he's a painter.
he's a
and
decorator? There you go. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
and he has his own business. He has done for quite some years now. He's an Italian guy. He and his family had cafes and restaurants in Melbourne CBD for many years. And at some point, he decided to get out of that and he got into this. And from a family point of view, good call, because, restaurants and so forth are a nightmare. But he has a very successful business. Is he the best painter in the world? Well, he's very good at what he does, but I'm sure others can do it too. But the thing is, he's so likable that I don't think it would matter what price he put on the piece of paper. The people that have used it before will just keep getting him back, And you see people like that. Likable people tend to really succeed, don't they? Nice, likable people. Because people want to buy, or they tend to trust people that they like and buy from them. So,
People do business with people they like and love first and foremost. And I talk about, it's like your pool cleaner, your nail lady, the guy who mows your lawns. If you like them, you don't care what anybody else is paying in the street is paying for those services. You're not in the market to change because you're getting a good result and they're trustworthy. I've got a guy who mows my lawns here at the farm. He's been mowing my lawns for all but the first year. And apparently he worked for a firm that we had do our gardens up in Sydney when we lived up there. And he turns up, 39 he's here every second week in winter and every week in summer, and he says, I just like riding on your ride-on mower, and he's here all day, and he does a great job, and I don't care. In fact, when he left his 3-day-a-week job because he was made redundant, he picked up work in my street from everybody else because he's just so good and so likable, and that's really important. I imagine that that's what your husband's like. And straight away when you said that, we used to have a friend of ours whose family were all doctors and lawyers, and he quit and became a painter, and he painted 3 or 4 of our houses, including a rental house, painting for us. And you could trust him. You could go out and leave him there. No trouble at all. Very, very good. It's all about communication.
And I think dentists have got sort of the upper hand in this space, because if we like our nail lady, our barber, our hairdresser, our massage person, whatever, they're usually things that we're not really that worried about if it was to go a little bit pear-shaped. You might get a bad haircut, you might get some crappy nails, whatever. But when it comes to the dentist, most of us, including me after 31 years in dentistry, hate having dentistry done on myself. I'm so scared. And I'm the most nervous patient. I'm terrible. Number one, so we're really nervous of it. I don't think I'm alone. We know that many people are anxious about going to the dentist. So when we find a dentist, it's like finding a surgeon or a cardiac surgeon or something. If we really like them and we really trust them, we're not going anywhere, So I think a dentist holds a really special place there. And I think we can really take advantage of that if we do a good job, And I think many get hooked up on the toys they've got in the surgery. I've got this technology and I can do this and I can do pretty crowns and nice margins and whatever else you guys all like to talk about. But the patients haven't got a clue what that all looks like. If it's a good crown, a crap crown, a good filling, a crab filling. What they do know is that the place is clean, the receptionist was beautiful, the dentist is lovely, So yeah, super important stuff.
That's what sells. It's not how many shiny objects. I used to get away with it. People would say, "What's that thing with the orange light?" And I go, "The blue light." And I go, "Oh, it's a laser." They go, "Oh." And people would say I was high tech because I had a TV on the ceiling. You're high tech. I go, "Oh yeah, very high tech." But it is all about relationships and making sure that. I used to tell people when they came for a job, I said 95% of these patients, I'd be happy to have them come to my home as guests.
Yeah,
I said
that's nice.
friendship that we have with them, and you can have a joke with them about stuff as well.
Yeah.
It is about creating those relationships, and it's the same with clients, long-term clients as well. You were talking too that you also had a very good relationship as a long-term employee with one of your dentists, and that's always nice to know too, that there's this respect for who people are and care, as opposed to they just turn up and do a job and I don't really know much about them afterwards. It's interesting your comment about the cafes in your family, because I remember playing golf with a cafe owner from Sydney, and I said, "What do you do about the theft? Like the internal theft?" He goes, he said, "It's just a fact of life. We just factor it in. Consumer pays." And I'm thinking, "Oh, is that how you handle it?" He says, "Well, they're going to move on anyway in the end. They don't stay around long, and so they can be good workers." So that's another scary thing. Have you found an embezzler in practice
No.
management?
I've never, but I do know of a story in my hometown of somebody who worked in a business that wasn't dentistry, was a pharmacy, and she was there for many, many, many years. And in the end, there was an issue there, and it was massive. Yeah, so we were having this conversation with someone recently, with a group of us, a group of colleagues. We're talking about this sort of stuff because I've never come across it. It might have happened before my eyes. I've never seen it, but I don't think so. But yeah, it's a scary thing. And I think often it happens with long-term people that you trust, and you trust them so much that you don't bother to look.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened to my dad too. Trusted somebody so much that he didn't bother to look, So I think that's another scary thing, isn't it? A bit of a lesson.
I've got a couple of friends in North America who run separate fraud investigation businesses in dental practices, and one of them was telling me that about a case where this dentist found a long-term employee had stolen over $50,000, and he said, what do I do? He said, she's actually a good employee. Can I just keep her? And the guy goes, no, that's not the answer. But this same investigator said that in the United States, and this is something that we as coaches should be on top of, Amina, in the United States, 82% of dentists don't reconcile their banking with their daily
Yeah.
taking.
Yeah.
And so they just say, oh, I've got a load of money, let's scoop it up, let's take it to the bank. And then, because there's a lot of write-off in America as well, because they write off against insurance. And so it's just, we write off this much. But in Australia, there's zero write-off really. But that's the scary, if 4 out of 5 dentists aren't reconciling, that creates opportunity for theft.
Well, theft, but also like character defamation, because the girls that are working there are protecting themselves by doing things to ensure or protect their integrity. So if things aren't done properly like that, and people come and go, well, things don't add up, you're left in nowhere land, to be able to prove yourself innocent. So I'm always careful to explain that to staff when I'm telling them to do these things, that you could come undone if there was another person in the practice doing the wrong thing or something, and you haven't done all these things to cover your tracks.
Yeah, they'll blame you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be left. Yeah, that's true.
Vulnerable. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, especially if the real thief has a sainthood.
Get set up. Yeah.
Yeah, that in fact, often that can happen because they understand they have a sainthood, and so they pick who's going to be my patsy if I get caught, and so they actually set up those people. Yeah. Sad that we're ending on this unhappy note, but again, it goes back to that. I guess it goes back to that thing, Amina, that we as dentists, we are very trusting. Sorry, as a profession, we are very trusting, and we are susceptible to working too hard in our business, that we miss out on checks and balances that we should be operating on. I think one of the greatest gifts I had was I did a locum, and they showed me in a ledger how they banked, and they said, this is what we bank. And we know what comes in each day, and what comes in as a payment from another day. This is how we cross-check it in a ledger. And I thought, that is just so simple. And so I followed that ledger for ages and ages. And then the biggest difficulty I had was when computers came in, that being a person who did long appointments, the computer would tell you that Mrs. Smith had 6 fillings, and these 6 fillings had 6 amounts, and the payment was one amount, but there was nothing in the filling column that matched that payment amount. You had to manually, do these add up to that? And I just always wanted to know, this is how much work I did, this is how much I got paid. And so every day I got a day sheet that said, this person paid in full, this person didn't. And I go, well, why did that person not pay in full? I've done the work, I should be paid. Just like my staff do the work, they get paid. So why am I being punished because of this? I'll fix it up later. And so that ledger, that paper ledger thing was very good to help me balance the books and value, as I mentioned earlier, value that when I set my templates up for my practice, I wanted to know that I got the same pay each day. I didn't work like a doctor surgeon. One day I'm in theatre, that's when I make the money. The next day I'm doing rounds, I make no money. The next day I'm doing consults, I make a little bit of money. I just thought, I just want to be like my staff. Full day's work, full day's pay. And so we worked our template on that, and then the template had to have rules. And that's another hard thing. That's a topic for another day, is how do we get.
But I do love doing that, because so many things, cash flow, the impact on steri, like so many advantages doing all that stuff.
It is. Even just hygiene checks, working out that I can't go and do a hygiene check while I've got rubber dam on a patient, because how's that patient what are they going to do? They can't talk. So why would I do that? So all the rubber dam stuff, all the endo had to be done in the first half hour. So the hygiene checks were done in the second half hour on those, when I was doing because I only ended up doing single root stuff in the end anyway. Amina, we've run out of time.
Yeah.
Tell the viewers, tell the listeners, what's the best way to get in touch with you in terms of if they're interested in finding out more and maybe having you come and help them with with their dental practices, what's the best way?
Well, you can definitely always call me on my mobile, 0416 313 118. You can also contact me at amina@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au, or go to the Dental Business Mastery website and contact Julie and myself, or either or, there as well. We're always open to having a bit of a chat. Reach out. I mean, even if it's just crossing your mind, a passing thought, pick up the phone, have a chat. And if you need help, we're always here to help our dental community.
Well, I mean, everybody needs help, and the results are good. In most cases, the help is beneficial. As you said, it's like a personal trainer. It's all about doing things properly and doing things right, so that you get to the result that you want quicker and with less trouble.
Yeah.
Amina, thanks very much for being a really good guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Really great talking with you today.
You too, David. Thanks so much for having me. And we'll have to catch up soon. Make sure you let us know when you're down this way.
I will. Amina, thanks so much.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favourite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.